Ranieri tries one!
Well, there you have it. The season is over, and not in the way that people were saying, when the transfer window ended and someone tore their hamstring. The season's actually over. And now we go into silly season. We've gone from slightly disappointing, very disappointing season, and now we're going to enter silly season and deal with the transfer window and all that jazz. But this is not that kind of Gooner. It's not that kind of Gooner. Get your head out of the gutter. Episode 22. We made it that far. I'm pretty impressed with us. And we're coming to you after Arsenal's 2-1 win at Southampton to close out the season. And we're going to talk about the Southampton game a little bit, and we're going to touch on, of course, the women's team winning their second Champions League title, champions of Europe. You will never sing that. Every other team in England. And we're also going to do kind of a quick preview of the summer window and kind of how we're feeling heading into that and all that jazz. So, and we have a special guest to do that with us, who we'll bring in a second. But I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. You can follow me on Bluesky at shamsdale.bskysocial. And with me, of course, is Drew, who you can follow on Twitter at GeeChieKid and on Bluesky at supplyanddemandrew.bsky.social. Drew, how are you doing, my friend?
Like we talked about, tired, allergy riddled. This time of the year, silly season is my most headache-inducing period of the football calendar. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good. So.
Yeah. It's going to be great, and Arsenal's going to sign Cristiano Ronaldo, apparently, if Twitter is to be believed. Very, very excited for that. And our guest joining us today, you know him. You've probably listened to him before, and if you haven't, I really encourage you to do so. Joining us today is none other than the founder of Arsenal, Elliot, who you can follow on Twitter. Actually, you can block on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. You can follow on Bluesky at, is it Yankee Gunner at arsenalvision.com on Bluesky?
It's just arsenalvision podcast.com. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And yeah, we have to explain the founder of Arsenal, because that is a libel that was put on the screen at the Emirates. And I think it's important that we clarify that it is not actually the case. Yeah.
I laughed so hard when that came up.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to get the chance to speak to the Emirates crowd at Emirates Stadium just before the final home game against Newcastle, and they put it up on the jumbotrons, the big screens and all that stuff, to talk to them about the fundraising we've done for the Arsenal Foundation in the refugee camp at Zaatari, and it was wonderful to be able to have that opportunity. But as they're transcribing your words onto the screen, the captions, someone sent me a picture where it says, Elliot, founder of the Arsenal, because that's all that fit on the screen. And the next line was Vision Podcast, but it just says Elliot, founder of the Arsenal. And so the good news is I can tell you I have chosen not to buy Cristiano Ronaldo. We're not doing that. It's great. It's just going to be Mbappe this summer. So you'll have to look at that.
I think I can come to terms with just Mbappe.
Yeah.
But
you'll learn to live with disappointment.
Yeah. Well, Elliot, thanks so much for coming on, and thanks for joining us. And by the way, huge congrats for the work that you guys have done with the Arsenal Foundation and the Zaatari refugee camp. I mean, it's truly inspiring stuff. It's
work that I obviously, the club have invested in it. I should say the foundation have invested in it. And really the money that's been invested in it has largely come from our community, the Arscast community, the community of everybody that's given. We've funded 5 years of the Coaching for Life program in the Zaatari camp, where young people, men, boys and girls, get to escape the harsh reality of their life there and be provided resiliency sessions and play football, and through football, make friendships, develop the skills they need to provide for themselves in a way that they're not equipped to do in the refugee camp otherwise. So I don't want to go too deep into it, other than to say, we've raised 1.2 million pounds the last 3 years, and it's been an inspiration to see everybody reach in their pockets, especially at a really hard time globally, and support that program. And there are so many causes that need help, but it's powerful to see when you just say, hey, this is the one our club chose, so let's all get behind it. I had the chance to go to the refugee camp, see it firsthand. The work is really powerful. And when you see the badge there in those green spaces in that place, it fills you with a lot of pride. So I wouldn't say that I'm always thrilled with everything the club does, but in this case, I can say I'm unreservedly proud.
Yeah. I mean, it's utterly amazing, and just keep up the great work. And for your efforts, you guys were joined at. I promise we'll get to Arsenal stuff in a minute, but you guys were joined at
We got to
Union
do some
Chapel.
glazing first. Let's glaze the
Yeah.
podcast. Here we go.
Yeah. Well, you guys are joined at Union Chapel by none other than Mikel Arteta himself. So I kind of wanted to ask before we get rolling, like what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is the case that no one asked him, at least from the podcast, to do it. He found out that the show was going on. They stay at this Hilton in Islington the night before games, and it's very close to Union Chapel. And he was aware of the success of the fundraiser, and I think he recognizes when a community within the Arsenal fan base bands together, and he has this saying, "Make it happen." And I think it was expressed to him that these people made it happen for those kids in Zattery, and he was close. He had the opportunity. He's a very, very intense dude. And, you see that firsthand. He's not there to glad hand. He's not there to make friends. He's there to send a message, to be a supporter of what was accomplished by that community. It meant a lot that he did it. Like I said, no one asked him to. But really special moment. And what I will say is just the intimacy of that environment. It's about 1,200 people. It's a converted church, and the wall of sound just comes at you. And you could see the emotion briefly penetrated the Terminator outer layer of skin that he has on. Just a really cool experience.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. I remember it was starting to, it kind of dripped onto the timeline a little bit, and then all at once of people just being like, "Holy shit, Mikel Arteta's at the Union Chapel show." So that's just honestly incredible. I love everything the Arsenal Vision does, and Arsblog as well. I know you guys combined for that show. So just really special to see like the difference that you guys are making in the community, and just wanted to start off with that.
Thanks. Yeah, let's talk some Arsenal.
Now let's talk some Arsenal. So for the Southampton game, I don't want to spend that much time on it because we don't have you for that long. So I want to get your perspective on some other stuff. But for the Southampton match, I found the starting 11 really curious because you had it looked like it was a little fluid at times. So it looked like Jakub Kivior at right center back, and then you had Kieran Tierney at left center back. Alexander Zinchenko reprised his left back role. Raheem Sterling, thankfully, had his final start at right wing. Ethan Nwaneri is playing at the right 8. Mikel Merino's back at center forward. So I thought it was interesting. I'm not entirely sure if this was done on purpose, but the way that the match unfolded, it just kind of felt like you were watching kind of like a closing argument from the season of like, these are kind of the guys after the first 14, 15 stars of the team. And, I don't know, again, whether or not this is on purpose or not, but it wasn't quite good enough. And it was kind of a dull watch for a lot of periods. They barely beat Southampton. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on that idea that maybe Arteta did this on purpose, or was really just trying to send a message of some sort.
I think it's probably a combination of things. I mean, first of all, I think he feels that he owes these players something. Maybe not Raheem Sterling, but certainly Kieran Tierney getting a send-off, right? A chance to play a final game for Arsenal. Alexander Zinchenko potentially playing a final game for Arsenal. Ethan Nwaneri, who's just not seen access to playing time recently, getting a chance to not just play, but play in the role that he may feel long-term is where he belongs, and where he may ultimately belong long-term. The interesting thing here is he's obviously Mikel was sat up in the stands next to Josh Kroenke. And sure, he may have had a chance to say, "Look at this dross that I have to work with. How am I supposed to win big stuff with? Look at this crap." Obviously, he didn't say that and wouldn't have said that. But I think maybe if you listen to Mikel and you parse his words pretty carefully, the speech he gave at the Emirates after the Newcastle game, his pre-match comments before the Southampton game, were really focused on, I feel a lot of pride and appreciation for players who have been giving more than they should be asked to give, who have pushed beyond the barrier of what they can give. And Jurrien Timber, he made it clear he played on that ankle problem that needed surgery until they could finally shut him down and play. He's made it clear Ben White shouldn't even be playing at all. He's not fit. That there are other players going through things. He referenced a player in the dressing room dealing with personal life issues that are affecting his on-field performance. There are things that are clearly at play here where the players that he's been asking to go out there and fight for the club in other circumstances would simply not be playing. And this was a chance to say, hey, look, if those guys hadn't given all of that, this is really what we'd have to work with. And so I think it's a way of saying thank you to some of these players who are leaving the club. It's a way to give minutes to some players that haven't had the chance to play as much as they might have liked, but also maybe a chance to just send a message to the supporters, to Josh Kroenke, to everybody around the club that we pushed this squad to its absolute breaking point. And had those players not given more than they had to offer, this is what you would have seen us putting out there in a semifinal of the Champions League. So just a message that more work has to be done. He then said after the game, when asked about transfers, you must win the transfer market. The best teams have the best players. I just think it's unequivocal. He's saying, I have appreciation for my players, but it's not enough. We have to have the best players, and that's not what we have right now.
Yeah. And I remember even a couple weeks ago, he said something to the effect of, we knew starting the season that we were going to be a little short and that would lead to injuries and kind of, the issues that we have had this season. A lot of pointed comments, over like the last month and change. And Drew, I want to bring you in here, kind of what do you make of those comments from Arteta? Is it, as so many people love to characterize, is it him whining, or is this him kind of using his media time to actually send a message home?
No, I think Arteta's been like blaring on his bugle for months about needing reinforcements, right? What the club needs to do to take the next step. I think the team we put out and his comments in the post-match, how everything kind of transpired, I think it shows that why a lot of fans, jokes aside, still feel like the effort that we put forth this season to finish second and reach semifinals of Champions League was absolutely monumental. And most clubs would have folded, I feel like, on the pitch. The mental strain involved, the physical strain involved. And when you're under physical strain, that puts even more mental strain on you. For anyone that's ever dealt with any kind of injury ailment that's even remotely serious knows like the physical toll will take and the mental toll will take on you. So the fact that these players performed above and beyond the call of duty, I think I agree with Elliot. I think it's commendable that he gave a lot of those players the ability to be sent off the right way. I don't think that he put out a team that was bad just as like sending a message, so to speak, but also I feel like it had that unintended consequence in a good way, because it does show, had we not have made, changes at halftime, had we not changed the shape or how we played, we may have lost to arguably one of the worst teams in Premier League history. It was the Premier League on the final day. That's not how you want to end the season. Fan base would have erupted on socials or whatever it was. So, yeah, I feel like there's going to be a lot of good to come of it. At least that's the hope we have anyway. But as we've all said through various mediums, whether if it's podcasting or like writing or whatever it is, that we know what we have to do in the summer. And Arteta's made it clear. So, and thankfully, because of the way the transfer window works this summer, given the Club World Cup, we might see business done very, very, very early. And as Shem and I were talking about before we were recording, a huge statement would be for us to go out and in the first week of the window, bring in 2 massive names right off the bat. And that would show not just that the club are serious, but it would show the fans. And I think a lot of the fans just want that kind of like that flag in the ground, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, okay, now we know we can actually be confident that we're going to go out and do it. Whereas opposed to so many fans are just used to the final day, the Raheem Sterling type signings, the Williams of the world or whatever it is. Yeah. It has to be the literal opposite this season. And as I was thinking about today when I was working, because like Liverpool are already moving mad in the transfer window already in a way that I don't think even their fans expected. We know City are going to go out and do things. Newcastle have Champions League. They have even more money now. They're going to go out. So it's on us. The onus is on us to actually put up or shut up. And I think Arteta really kind of made that clear. And that's kind of all that matters to me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Where, like you said, Liverpool are going after Florian Wirtz, and
that's
City
depressing in my world.
Yeah.
And it's just depressing. Full stop. Yeah.
It is legitimately.
Yeah, it's I think Liverpool are very aware that this is an opportunity for them to maybe establish a dynasty of some sort, and they're going to make the corresponding moves for that. And
can I just present a slightly different perspective on that, actually, which is simply I don't think the time you want to be trying to recruit big name, 150 million pound top tier talent is after Trent, Salah, and Van Dijk have gone, and everybody knows you're in a rebuild and you're nowhere close, right? Trent's just gone. Salah and Van Dijk are still there, but it has to be acknowledged that at some point in the not too distant future, we are going to see them start to drop away and not be able to play at the level they did this season. They've just won the title. They still have Salah and Van Dijk. Now's the time to get that next group of players in who can keep them from imploding when Salah and Van Dijk start to tail off. It wouldn't surprise me if that decline starts as soon as this season. But once you've got Verts, right? And then maybe they go out and even make another statement signing. And so as they start to age out of the Salah and Van Dijk era and Trent, they will be hoping that the Verts and whoever else they sign era can start to come up. Karakesh and Frimpong,
yeah.
Right. And so I think it's really savvy, not in the sense of establishing a dynasty, because I think that the chief load-bearing walls of this dynasty, so to speak, or this era at Liverpool are about to come down, but they're very smart in that they're trying to put in the pillars of the next era in place before these come down. The whole thing collapses and suddenly you're firefighting. I think it's less about dynasty building and more about continuity preparation.
I think
future-proofing as well. Like if you're future-proofing, so you know that when you lose those huge names, you're going to expect some sort of drop off, but the drop off won't be so severe that they're looking at like a United situation or a Spurs situation where they're falling out of not just the top four, but maybe Europe in general. That would be a disaster for them or anybody really. So
we kind of, a lot of people are underwhelmed by what we did last summer, but if what we did was underwhelming, what do you call what Liverpool did? They signed Chiesa and Mamardashvili and loaned Mamardashvili out, and Chiesa is worthless, right? So they really rolled the dice with the core they had, and it came up, whatever it's supposed to come up. What's a good thing to come up? Sevens, I guess.
I think so. Yeah. I'm not much
came
of
up
a
whatever
gambler.
they wanted. It came up Premier League champions, and that's great for them. But I think the seams were starting to show. And, last summer they were able to just run it back and get away with it. But I think they recognize that they have a shrinking window to get some new things in place before this era has to be replaced with the next one. I think Arsenal in a very different position, right? Because the core of our team is entering its Klopp slot winning era kind of period right now, where everybody that is a load-bearing wall at Arsenal is 24, 25, 26, 27. So we're trying to get, in a way, we need our Van Dijk signing. Virgil van Dijk was the last piece Liverpool put in place that became the core of this winning group. We need that piece. We just need it at the other end of the pitch. We need our Van Dijk signing, but at forward. And then we keep that group together. And in 5-6 years, hopefully we're talking about, is it time to start continuity preparing for the Saka, Saliba, Gabriel, Odegaard, Rice era to age out? That's hopefully where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Saka can get a lifetime contract if he wants, but the others, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. Look, if we win the treble, they can build a Kai Havertz statue for all I care. It's fine.
I would be a big fan of that, honestly.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I guess what are your takeaways like entering the summer window, like from this season, and kind of just looking around and seeing what other teams are already starting to do?
Well, look, we missed a big opportunity this season. The title was won on 84 points. Liverpool finished on the exact same goals and goals allowed as they did the season before. Now you could say, had they really needed it, they could have pushed it further. But I could say, had they been pushed, they might have collapsed. So you can cut it both ways. I think, and by the way, I want to just put this up front. Any criticism I'm about to make is countered by the fact that I am fully recognizing that with the injuries we had, we could have signed 3 of the best attackers in world football and still not won the Premier League, because when you lose Saka, when you lose Odegaard, when you lose Gabby, when you lose Martinelli, when you lose Kai, when you lose Jesus, you're probably not going to win the things you want to win. Maybe we would have won the Champions League, but that's another story. But what I would say, we missed a trick because both City and Liverpool had underwhelming last summers, and had we really nailed it and gotten a little lucky with injuries, I think we would very much have been in the catbird seat to win the title. And I think we would have gone on to do it had we stayed fit and added appropriately. Now we find ourselves in the tougher position. City already showed their intent in January, spending $200 million, and I imagine they're going to spend even more this summer. So they are, in my estimation, going to be right back there with a shout next season. And if Rodri is in decent form, they're getting a Ballon d'Or winner back. Liverpool have shown they're not ready to call time on this era. If Salah and Van Dijk are good for another season, you add Wirtz, you add whoever else they buy, they're going to be formidable again. So the window where it looks like it could have been won in a more easy fashion, that went to Liverpool, not to Arsenal. The good news in my mind is when fully fit, I think our squad is still equipped along with our manager to go challenge for the title, regardless of what we do. And there is no ambiguity around what we need. If I think back to the era coming out of Unai Emery when Arteta first arrived, I couldn't have mapped out for you the plan of how we get to where we are now. The hard work's been done. The easy work now is simply go buy some attackers. The only thing I would say to counter that is you can get that wrong, even with the best intentions, the best scouting. You go spend the money. You go buy the guy you think is the best guy or the best couple of guys. You ask any 2 Arsenal fans or 3 Arsenal fans who the 2 attackers we should sign are this season. You'll get 6 different names. So I think it's very straightforward what we need to do. Whether we pick the right ones, that to me feels like a crapshoot. I genuinely, if you told me that Gyökeres was a home run or a flop, or Sesko was a home run or a flop, or Nico Williams is a home run or a flop, I believe you. Because I really don't think that's going to be as easy to predict as people think it is.
Yeah. Kind of throughout this final match week, obviously, we were playing and, we were keeping eyes on other results, and Everton went ahead at Newcastle, and then just yet another moment of madness, moment of wanting to be the main character from a PGMO referee, spoiled the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. I saw Newcastle dropping a 6th in the table, and I knew in the back of my head that wasn't going to be permanent.
I had welcome Isak posts drafted on Bluesky and Twitter, and I was just waiting for the full time. But no, sure enough.
My timeline was Isak, and it was just like, no, stop. It's not, it's like you're going to jinx it. But yeah, things worked out where Newcastle were essentially gifted entry into the Champions League. So that means probably Isak's off the table. So, the annoying thing is, once again, it's kind of been the theme of the season. We don't get that little bit of luck we need. And now we enter a summer where any center forward that we go after is going to have quite a level of risk to them. Honestly, Ollie Watkins might be the center forward with the least risk attached to him, just in terms of, his acclimation to the Premier League already and the price tag that would probably be on him. But yeah, any center forward that we go after is going to be a bit of a crapshoot. So I almost kind of find myself wondering if maybe the alternative is to, go after a superstar winger and then maybe, get in someone who can play like a false 9, like an Mbumo or a Semenyo, or, we got linked to Julian Alvarez today. So maybe that's another option. But, Drew, I kind of want to get your thoughts on that. Is there a center forward that you're leaning towards a little bit, or are you kind of on this? I'm trying to get you in trouble here, Drew.
I am a master of keeping myself out of trouble in these conversations, because I also hate these conversations, because it's been this like on repeat for like the whole call. We'll at least say 6 months, right? I think there's 2 center forwards I prefer. But at the end of the day, I'm going to bring up something Alec just said. Like, there's no guarantee a transfer works, right? You can have a surefire thing on paper. Like, for example, we'll take Wirtz. For all we know, if Wirtz goes to Liverpool for whatever 120 million pounds, we'll just call it, he could snap his leg in preseason. He's out for the whole year. That's part of a transfer risk. It's not even just will they play, will they perform. It's will they even be fit. We just saw that with Michael Marino. Injured in preseason, didn't play for God knows how long after that, right? So I think for me, I'm in this mentality of whoever we sign has to give us the best chance to win this next coming season for me. And I think that's why I lean towards certain players. I think we're in a win now. It has to be a win now mentality. I think if this was 2 years ago, for example, I would be way more high on like Shesko, who I rate quite highly. I think people forget just because I don't want to primarily think that they think I don't rate him as a player. I do. I think he's good. He has a phenomenal ceiling, probably higher than Gyökeres, for example. I think, in my estimation, but I don't. But I think he is a player like Shesko. Despite the positives, I don't think I look at him and say that's the guy to get the attack over the line to take us to a Premier League title. I don't look at him that way. I just don't. He's not ready yet, and to do that, he isn't. So I think you mentioned Watkins. I wouldn't be terribly sad with Watkins, honestly, because of those. The betting period is quick. As you say, he's reportedly a huge fan of the club, so he has an extra 5% motivation to go on and want to do big things for us. That genuinely does help. You know, we've seen plenty of players in the past who are fans of the club go to that club and then do big things for them, so we know that as a thing. I understand the risks around Gyökeres, but when you look at a player who has scored 97 goals and 25 odd assists in 103 appearances, you can't say there's not a very good player there, despite the maybe drop off in some of the numbers. That's still ludicrous. Like, when push comes to shove, he's outperformed any other player in Portugal that I can remember in like the last 10 years in terms of how well he's performed as an attacking player as a center forward. So there's some glitter there, we'll call it, right? I just kind of feel like I don't tie myself to names. I tie myself to I will trust whoever Berger and Arteta think will get us over the line. That's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm not tied to players anymore. I have players I prefer, but it's more of the mentality of what are we going to do to make sure it's us and not Liverpool. It's us and not City. It's us and not even Chelsea or Newcastle or whoever it might be. That's where I'm at this point. I'm not going to tether myself to a particular rowboat and hope for the best. It's who they think is going to get us there. I'm all for it. So,
yeah, I'm very much at a point right now where you know what the center forward options are, you know what the bad ones are, and you know what the ones that probably would be pretty good are. And I think with left wing, the market is, just boasts an insane amount of talent, right? We've been linked to Nico Williams and Rodrigo and Leao and Semenyo and Jamie Gittins and, a whole bunch of players. So, yeah, I think obviously there's a couple names I have at the top of each of those lists, but I'm at a point where it's all about just bringing them in and bringing them in early. And I think I'm still, despite the last two windows, I'm still at a point where I trust the club's judgment to get those signings right. But, Elliot, kind of with the last year in mind and kind of looking forward into, what we need and probably the competition that we're going to face for, certain high level signings. What's your confidence level in terms of, how well we're going to be able to deliver, during the summer window?
100%. We're going to 100%. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. Now, whether you like the guy we pick, that's up to you. And I kind of want to echo something Drew said. In this instance, I'm not going to get attached to names. Now, I want to be clear. I don't like the appeal to authority approach to discussing football. Like, oh, you think you know better than professional scouts and the manager? And like, no, I don't think I know better. But if we aren't going to have an opinion, what are we all doing here? Like, the whole point is we love to talk about it. We love to debate it. We love to analyze it. And part of debating and analyzing, talking about it is having a perspective. So have a perspective. I have no problem with someone saying, Sesko, we shouldn't have gotten him. Gyökeres was better. There's nothing wrong with that if that's your opinion. But I think in this instance, I'm in a weird spot where I am not confident there is a clear, obvious option and a clear, obvious wrong option. So whether you say Sesko or Gyökeres or Ollie Watkins, to me, I can see the bull case and the bear case for those players. And I'm not going, if we choose Sesko, but I would have taken Watkins, I'm not going to say the club screwed it up again. Yeah. Screwing it up again would be not buying two forwards. We're going to buy two forwards. I feel very confident of that. Or if not two forwards, we're going to buy a forward and some kind of wing fielder, attacking midfielder type player. We need, in my mind, maybe those three things, but I would accept getting two of them. I think two of them is an acceptable approach. We're going to go for Zubamendi. You know what? I'll say something more direct here than I've said on my pod, and then I probably will say on my pod because I'm a huge coward. I don't see it with Zubimendi. That doesn't mean I think it's a bad call. And this is where I will do the appeal to authority. Much smarter, better watchers of football, including very smart clubs like Liverpool, have wanted this player. And for everybody who's losing their mind about they got Florian Wirtz, they're acting quick and decisive. We're about to announce the signing of a player they wanted. We're about to announce at the first opportunity, I would imagine in this June window, the signing of a player they wanted. We did go for Rice, by the way. All right, it wasn't last summer, it was the summer before. There's this weird discourse all of a sudden where it's like, we show no ambition in the market. Well, our first signing in the summer is going to be a guy that everybody, including Liverpool, wanted. And 2 summers ago, we got the biggest signing in world football that happened, right? So I am a little more sanguine on our transfer business. When I look at last summer, City did nothing, Liverpool did nothing. We did something, but not the things people wanted. The market just wasn't really out there. It was a Euros summer. It delayed business. Players in the Euros came back totally broken, and we've seen the ramifications of that throughout the season. So, I'm not going on a global apology tour for the club, but I will say that like Zubimendi is a great example of where you want me to have a position. My position is I don't see it. But it's the right thing to do. It's a position we need to buy. It's a player that's in demand. He seems to have the qualities that we rate and that other smart clubs rate. And so, that's an example of where I may not agree that's the player. I'd prefer someone like Adam Morton, for example, who I'm completely in the tank for. But I think it's a great early move to solve a position of need. I think the club will get Zubi. I think we'll get a backup keeper of some variety. I think we'll get a versatile defender, and I think we'll get 2 forwards. I think we'll get all of that done. I think we need to get all of that done. What may make people nuts is that Zubi, the goalkeeper, and the defender may happen before either of the forwards, and so we'll have a summer of people saying the club have bottled it again. But I will at least go this far as to say, you asked me my confidence level. I'm 100% confident we will get those positions I just named. But if we don't get it done before the preseason, I will regard that as a mini failure. I think not only do we need those forwards in, I think we need them in where they have a full preseason with the club so that we are not talking about, well, come January, they were both really good. We can't afford that. We cannot afford that.
Fully agree. That's a great point. I think we've talked about it before on multiple pods, also kind of in the group chat, where for me, the biggest kind of tell of the summer is decisiveness. You have to go and be decisive. And sometimes when you're decisive, you might make a misstep or 2 in that decisiveness, but at the end of the day, I don't want to pull a history reference, but I'm always good for one. Like, the most decisive generals are the ones that always win, typically. And they'll deal with the mistakes on the fly as they happen. But decisiveness is absolutely key. So this is no different.
It's hard, Drew. So I'll just throw one thing in there where like it's easy for us to send on a podcast say they have to be decisive. And for the record, Mikel Arteta made the point he wants these players in to have a full preseason. He wants the business done earlier. But let's say you are Berta and Mikel has said, my dream signing is Rodrigo. I'd do anything to get him. And Berta says, look, I think that can happen. But Madrid have some deals and moves in progress. And they are simply not going to sell Rodrigo until they can make an announcement they've signed someone. It's just a thing they need to do for their fans. It's going to happen, but dominoes have to fall. And I'm thinking it's late July or early August. That's what's going to happen. And the fans could be losing their mind. And all along in the background, we could know that Rodrigo is going to shake loose and be available to us. Would you rather have an Mbumo, or a Semenyo than a Rodrigo? Because I wouldn't. Some people might. That's not the point. My point is, this is where it's hard because for any club that's selling someone important, they need to replace. And if in their mind, they need to make sure the replacement is lined up before they authorize the sale, this gets, as we know, gets very complicated very quickly. So it's easy to say it has to get done fast, but the selling club has to know what their continuity plan is too, and that's where it gets complicated.
Well, no, I don't agree with that. My point of decisiveness is if we know, so for example, like if we know that, we'll just use Viviani, for example, we know that so much legwork has been done. The minute the window opens, just confirm it, get it done. If it's over the line, go for it. That's what I mean by decisiveness. I know that there's going to be, we're probably still going to be a club that will operate under the guise of if there is a market opportunity, we'll try to pounce on it, like Rodrigo, for example, if that comes, if we don't know what the deal's with that yet. But let's just use that as an example.
It's an example,
yeah. If it's like 2 weeks in, 3 weeks into the summer and we catch wind of this might be available, but it might be like you said, July, August. I think that's one of those hiccups I was mentioning where you'll transition on the fly to know that, okay, well, this might delay how we actually wanted to run the summer, but it's worth that delay, if you know what I mean, right? But I do think we should be decisive in the things we know we can be decisive in, but with room to maneuver in terms of like nothing goes to plan, right?
You know what would be interesting would be like canvas Arsenal supporters and say, would you rather get Sesko June 1st or whenever that mini window opens, or have an 80% chance that you could get Isak August 30th because Arsenal knows something about Isak and knows something about Newcastle, and Newcastle are planning for a future where they can't keep him and they might be willing to let him go, not at the 150, but actually at 95. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, what percentage of Arsenal supporters, for the absolute right guy, the dream guy, would be willing to hold fire and wait and see if it could happen? Because you could convince me that just making a decisive move on a Sesko, for example, getting him in early and going forward with that as a plan is still the right move. But there's only one player I see in world football who I think has even a 5% chance of moving, who plays striker, who I would feel certain makes us the favorite day one, and that's Isak.
Yeah, 100%.
And so that's where it's, again, hard for Berta. Is Berta trying to shoot the moon, or is he just trying to move the needle? Because here's where Watkins becomes interesting, right? If you think Kai's pretty good and Martinelli's pretty good and Saka's pretty good, and they are pretty good, right? And when Aries coming around, he's going to be good. And maybe you think you can get another good season out of Leo. You sign Ollie Watkins like in June, he's going to be good. He's not going to be unbelievable superstar level, but he's played in the Premier League. He's good. You add him to Kai and Martinelli and Leo and Saka, and and like, you got a pretty good group. So that's where I really struggle. Is the goal to shoot the moon, or is the goal to just add that bit of quality into the group that we're short? And I'd love to know what Berta and Mikel think the goal is from that standpoint,
Yeah. And, I say this as a guy who on the previous episode said, I would find it unacceptable if we brought in our best targets on like July 18th or whatever. I'll put on the lawyer hat for a second.
Let's do it.
And just say that a lot of people think about the transfer market as a supermarket where you just walk in, it's $3.99 a pound, you pay it, and you walk out with it. That's not really how it works. It's every single one of these is a negotiation, and some of these, right, might function similar to a supermarket where there's a price, they won't budge, you pay the price, you leave with who you want. But some of these, like you guys have said, you walk in and you make an offer. Maybe there's a back and forth. Maybe they think someone's going to come in and, a week or two and make a better offer than you're making. Maybe, like you guys have alluded to, they want to get the replacement in. That's going to take some time. They have to go play, in the United States for the Club World Cup, and then they might come back and there's a whole thing, right? So I do accept that there's probably going to be a player or two who just can't arrive, in that supremely timely fashion that we would love. Most of them, however, if it's possible, I do want it to happen that way. And yeah, that Isak scenario, I gotta tell you,
I'm not saying we can get Isak. I just think like there are players we could probably get in pretty easily and straightforwardly. But if we thought they were the guys, candidly, if we were convinced Sesko, Gyökeres, or Watkins were the guys, Sesko and Gyökeres could have been gotten last summer and Watkins could have been gotten in January.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced that they're convinced those are the guys. That doesn't mean they're not good, and it doesn't mean we shouldn't sign them. But like, this is the really hard thing. We have to buy a forward or a couple forwards this window, and I'm not convinced Mikel and Berta know exactly who they. Well, I mean, I'm sure they have a list, and I'm sure they're going to go with it. But if you caught them in a quiet moment, I'm not sure that they wouldn't say to you, "We're rolling the dice on this guy. We're not 100% sure, but it's the best we think we can do."
Yeah.
No, I think we said before that. I think the closest surefire thing is Isak. He's the closest you're going to get to like that guarantee, even though there are no guarantees.
Yeah, and he's not moving
to get to it. Yeah, and I think that's going to be kind of thing. And I think one interesting conversation topic is about how we're going to operate in the summer is But we also know the players that we're maybe not so sure of, but kind of are sure of, are also players that have a lot of interest from other places. So then it becomes, when do you roll the dice? Because if you wait too long, they might go somewhere else, and then you miss out on them. And then also, so if you miss out on Gyökeres and Šeško because maybe you caught wind of maybe Isak is available, then he changes his mind last minute, and then you miss out on 3 targets you wanted. Then we're in a bind, right? So it's like this is weird like dance we have to play. It's almost like house hunting, right? Like you're seeing 3-4 houses, you're trying to put bids in on them, you're not sure which ones are going to be yet. Like I think it's more of a house hunt than grocery shopping. But I think
look, I've watched United fans fist pump as they signed Anthony, as they signed Jadon Sancho, as they signed Rasmus Højlund, as they signed Joshua Zirkzee. And let's be clear, on some of those, I knew they were walking into, or I say I knew like I knew. I didn't know. I felt they were walking into a disaster, especially Højlund and Zirkzee. We scouted them. I just thought the data in the video was clear. Those players weren't ready for that level. I thought Jadon Sancho was legit.
I loved him at Dortmund, and the way he flopped was like Memphis Depay level, and that was another big like no one expected it really because of how good he was. Yeah, it's true, and that's
Anthony's a great example. So you look at it, a team. I mean, if you want to talk about showing ambition, we need to show ambition. United showed a ton of ambition. Anthony, Sancho, Højlund, Zirkzee, right? Ambition up the wazoo, and they all failed, and now they're in desperate situation because of it. So showing ambition sounds all well and good, and fist pumping in a signing like Pepe, like Anthony, that feels great in the moment. When it flops, it's a disaster. And so I don't know that I want the club to just show ambition. I want them to get it right. And this is where I feel for them. If there isn't a player out there they're sure is the one they want, they're going to feel a lot of pressure to just get someone. And just getting someone can land you in a hell of a lot of trouble. And that's why clubs like City and Liverpool, for example, did basically nothing last summer. Because I don't think anybody felt completely sure of what was out there,
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I mean, Chelsea have spent a fortune on trash. You want to talk about the show ambition thing just falls apart the minute you look at the clubs that spend a lot poorly. Showing ambition isn't just spend a lot. Showing ambition is actually what Liverpool do to their credit, which is understand the market and make really smart purchases when the obvious option is there. And the obvious option sometimes is 120 million on Verts, but sometimes it's 30 million on Mohamed Salah.
No, they've mastered it, and I think we have to an extent as well, in a way that just has facilitated our rise to the top of the table. Yeah. Whereas with United and Chelsea, we'll see what Chelsea look like this summer. Now that they've gotten back to the Champions League, and I look forward to watching United get relegated next season. That'll be a lot of fun for me. I know you got to take off in a minute, so I'm going to cut the wheel here real quick. And, this weekend we saw the women's team win the Champions League, their second ever, and they beat Barcelona side that featured, a 2-time Ballon d'Or winner in it, and they beat Lyon to get there. And before Lyon, they beat Real Madrid. It's a hell of a run. Not to mention they brought in Renee, or not, they promoted Renee Slagers, 4 games into the season. It was shaping up not to be a successful campaign, and she really turned it around and came up with the best possible outcome here. So, I guess this is a 2-parter, right? Because the first question is, how, what do you think that does? Like, what do you think that does for the club, and like how did you feel witnessing it? And second, Ian Wright came out after the game, and he was being interviewed on the touchline, and he said, I think he said, they saved the club, right? And so how much do you agree with this idea that, the women's team have really saved the 24-25 season for Arsenal Football Club?
I think 2 things saved Arsenal: the Madrid tie and the women winning the Champions League. I think there's enough goodwill that comes from beating Real Madrid in the Champions League and making it back to the semifinals for only the 3rd time ever. And the women winning the Champions League, giving the club something to feel positive about. Even if not everybody who supports Arsenal is a big supporter of the women's team, it is a big achievement that the club can feel proud of, and just adds that little bit of positivity, good vibe. Seeing a trophy being hoisted up, at the Emirates at the end of the season. It's those 2 things, I think, have helped keep the club on relatively stable footing in terms of the mood. Now, I will say, and I'll relate this back to when Mikel came to Union Chapel, the intensity of that greeting reminded me that while the online narratives are starting to shape our world in powerful and distorting and scary ways, not just in football, but all areas of society, they still are overrepresented because of the way algorithms are programmed to promote the most divisive and engagement baiting content. And then you get out in the real world and you realize you've been talking to trolls, to children, to fake accounts, to, to people that are just clamoring for engagement. And by the way, that I want to be clear, just so that I'm not misunderstood. I'm not saying if you're frustrated with Mikel Arteta, or you're frustrated with Arsenal, you're a troll and you're engagement baiting. I'm simply saying that the extent to which the club was potentially headed for a crisis, I think, is overstating the reality of what I experienced when I go to the Emirates, when I engage with people, when I saw the reaction Mikel got at Union Chapel, for example. So that's one thing I'll say. The other thing I'll say is, look, I nearly teared up when they won it. And I think one of the reasons it was so moving is just simply that I had written them off as having a chance, because that's how much I regarded Barcelona as being the obvious winner of this game. So it was a stunning outcome. But it snapped me back to reality a little bit, just on, okay, look, I can get my head pretty far up my own ass about the process and the project, and it's about the journey, and that all sounds good. But it reminded me that it's also kind of about the trophies. Now, here's what I'll say. It's about that trophy, and it's about the Premier League trophy, because I lived through Mikel winning the FA Cup, and I lived through Arsene Wenger winning those last couple of FA Cups when nobody felt good about the club, the direction of the club, the team we had. So let's not pretend that an FA Cup salvages a season if you're miserable with the team and miserable with the direction. I think that's misleading. But the Champions League and the Premier League are what we want. And it is a stain on the reputation of the club that we have not won it on the men's side. It is a beautiful thing for the women that they've now done it twice. It is ridiculous that a club the size of Arsenal have not won the Premier League in 21 years. So yeah, winning a trophy snapped me back a little bit to reality that you can't just have your head up your ass, sniffing your own farts, talking about the process and projects and the trajectory and the journey forever. You got to win something. I know that. Just in terms of what I experienced, not in the context of the men, but just in context of the women doing it, I think seeing what Arsenal have built as a club that represents women's football the way it does is something we can be hugely proud of. It is a wonderful, I would say, aspect of how the club is viewed globally. When we can fill up the Emirates to watch the women play, it just shows the intensity of the passion of it. And here's the thing. It's not a trick. This is real. This is organic. You see this, Pink Street in Lisbon. You see the crowd outside the Emirates. Women's football is here to stay. It's real, and it's high quality football that's enjoyable to watch. That tie, that Champions League final was an exceptional advertisement for the sport in terms of the tactics, the talent, the adversity, the dark arts. It was all there, right? The pantomime stuff that went on. You saw incredible quality at both ends. You saw impactful substitutions. I loved it. I thought it was sensational. I have to say a word for Leah Williamson, who's come on our pod to talk about the fundraiser. She's been inside a refugee camp. She's an incredible representative of Arsenal Football Club in England at the national team level, a wonderful human being. And I thought she was sensational in that game. And what a moment for her. I mean, there were a lot of players that performed brilliantly under the most intense pressure, but for Leah, I think a really special moment. So look, I loved it. It meant a lot to me. It snapped me back to the importance of winning one of these and what it would mean if the men could go ahead and equal that. I just feel like as a club, we're in the right direction. The women's team is one of the biggest in the world, and it's doing amazing things. The men's team is back at the table, competing for the things we want to win. And you can very easily let it slip away by chasing, that last step, or getting worried about whether you should compare your season to a team that lost 22 times in the Premier League. So yeah, man, I loved it. I loved it for the women. I loved it for the club. I loved it for the people like Tim Stillman, who does our pod with us, who has just been a huge follower of the women's game and covering the women's game for a lot of years. And it's just going to make the club bigger. It's going to make the sport bigger. And I think it's going to be even more enthusiasm behind it next season. So all good things all around.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal to watch. I'll admit, I've maybe watched 6 or 7 of the women's games this season, right? But I was watching that final and my leg was bouncing like crazy, which I don't do. I'm very conscious of that kind of behavior. But my wife is sitting there next to me and she was like, I think it's really sweet that you're watching this game. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm watching Arsenal
like life and death.
Yeah, I'm watching Arsenal defend a 1-0 lead. Like, I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's still as scary as the first time I watched it.
Well, but you know what? You said something there, and I think this is the really important point, because I'm more of a casual follower of the women's game and Arsenal women. I'll admit that. I watched the Real Madrid tie, watched the Lyon tie, but like, you either do care or you don't. And when that game was on, and you were biting off your fingernails and your leg is bouncing and you feel like you're going to throw up, that tells you all you need to know. You know what I mean? Because you cannot fake the anxiety and the tension and the investment and the heart palpitations that you experience watching that game. And if you felt that way, like I did, and it sounds like you did, then that tells you all you need to know, which is it's not the women's team. It's just Arsenal Football Club in a Champions League final. And that's how it felt to me, you know?
Yeah. It was absolutely amazing. Drew, I mean, what were you able to catch the game, and like, what were the emotions that you were feeling afterwards?
I was working for the game and we were doing a live blog about it, so got to watch it. No, I think I agree with what you guys are saying. I think this is maybe the difference between. I make sure I don't lump in broader fan bases and compare them to broader fan bases. But what I will say is, I think only now we're starting to see like true support for the women's game in England. But if you go to other countries, like those fans still, like Barcelona Feminine, are massively supported by Barca men's fans. It's the same view. It's not Barca Feminine, it's not Barca, it's Barcelona, period. Like, full stop. Bayern has the same thing with their women's program. Lyon, same thing, because their women's team was phenomenal for God knows how long. So I feel like if we can actually get more fans on board with that thought process, where it's not like taboo to support the women's side of the game, and have fans understand there's just as much passion, just as much flair, just as much technical quality, that and anxiety-inducing moments you get from watching the women's team, because it's not just, oh, I'm just watching a bunch of women play. I'm watching Arsenal play. Too many people, I think, get so wrapped up in that it's the women's side of the game, apart from just thinking it's just football and it's just Arsenal. If you can do that, that would go such a long way in helping to move along our own process as a football club in general, as an entity. For me, I thought the game was great, and I'm with you guys. I did not anticipate that win, because Barca they're a sensational team, right? So, but I also think it's a strong advert for how the club are putting faith in the right people. So what Slager has done was nothing short of brilliant, right?
Yeah.
To see how quickly she turned the corner with them in the Barclays Women's Premier League, getting to see them this season, some of the performances they put in on the domestic level, how quickly the players responded to her on the pitch, off the pitch. It reminds me a lot of Arteta as well. And I think that also shows that the powers that be at the top of the club still continue to make really bold decisions that are putting us all on the right trajectory. And that's why I continue to have a lot of faith in what the ownership, what they're doing. I think that's a lot of why Elliot, for example, has such strong faith that we're going to do what needs to be done in the summer. Same thing with me, same thing with Sham. Sham brought up a good point. I think it was 2 or 3 podcasts ago, where it feels like we're at that point where the summer, or the preseason just before the Rams won the Super Bowl, where the Kroenkes went out and they sanctioned that massive, who was it for again? That the Rams.
It was Von Miller and then Odell Beckham Jr.
They got those 2 winning pieces because they're continuing to try to make the best decisions possible to put the club in a position where the club needs to be. They have done that with the Rams. They've done that with the Avs and the NHL. And so I think that's where we're at now with Arsenal. But I think the women's side of the game is also actually a critical piece of that, because having a great women's program also helps build your global brand. It helps do things like makes you stronger financially. It helps make you more attractive for not just fans, but also players as well. So yeah, I think as an advert, I couldn't be more proud of the women as well. Seeing, like, my social media was filled with people I didn't even know supported the women's side of the game as well. And you saw that kind of outpouring of it, whether it was on Instagram or Bluesky or Twitter or wherever it was. So yeah, for me, I thought it was brilliant. I love the match as well. It's also with what Elliot said about how it is that like kind of like stark reminder of like this is actually what it's about. That's why I always reference about how the first thing the regime came in and says we want to be like Bayern. The reason why Bayern continue to win is because winning feels good. Why Barcelona and all of them go out, they want to win every year because winning feels good, right? That's the whole point of the sport. And as much as I don't think winning has to be the core identity of your team, I think the core identity of a club has to be more than just did we win a trophy this season. But you still want to go out and make yourself a team that competes to do that year in, year out. I think winning on the women's side will serve as motivation for the men as well. I think that's kind of what matters to me too. So
yeah, for sure. All I know is that if anyone ever talks shit about Katie McCabe in front of me, I will fight them. So.
Fair enough.
Tell you what, let's wrap it up there. I know we've gone a little bit over the time here. Elliot, again, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on board to chat with us. It really does mean a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure. We'll get together at the end of the window, maybe, and review whether all this optimism I had was just me being a complete idiot, and we can sharpen our pitchforks together and book tickets to go to the Emirates.
Let's do it. I'm down. I'll meet you on a connecting flight or something. You can follow Elliot. I keep messing up the catchphrase. You can block Elliot on Twitter at Yankee Gunner, and you can block him on Bluesky at ArsenalVisionPodcast.com. I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale and on Bluesky at Shamsdale.bsky.social. Drew's at Geechee Kid on Twitter and at supplyanddemanddrew.bsky.social on Bluesky. And then the pod. You should follow us on Twitter and Bluesky and on Instagram and subscribe on YouTube. We're also on TikTok now, so check that out. All the handles and stuff are in the show notes, so check those out. If you're listening on Spotify, please do, and Apple Podcasts, please do leave us a 5-star review. That really does help. And just thank you so much for being here with us this season. We're going to keep the content rolling throughout the postseason, and we'll talk about transfers. We'll do some reviews, some all-time draft episodes. That'll be fun as well. So please do stay tuned. But until then, we'll be back with you after Arsenal. What's the next letter? C. Caramelize the transfer window. I don't know. I'm tired, man. But yeah, until then, take care and bye. Bye.